หนึ่งในมหาลัยที่ถือว่ามี Return on Investment สูงที่สุดนะฮะของ MBA เนี่ยได้แก่ Duke University นั่นเองนะซึ่งก็เป็นมหาลัยที่พี่เมฆจบมาเองด้วยนะฮะทำไมถึงมี Return มากสุดเพราะว่าค่าเรียนค่าครองชีพต่างๆเนี่ยไม่ได้แพงมากเมื่อเทียบกับมหาลัยอื่นๆที่อยู่ในเมืองใหญ่ๆนะฮะและที่สำคัญที่นี่จบออกมาแล้วเนี่ยก็ได้งานที่ดีๆทำกันทั้งนั้นเลยเนาะศิษย์เก่าหลายๆคนที่จบจากที่นี่ไปก็สร้างชื่อเสียงยกตัวอย่างให้ฟังเนาะเช่นทิมคุกนั่นเองนะ CEO ของ Apple นะฮะก็เป็นศิษย์เก่าที่ Duke University MBA เนาะเพราะฉะนั้นเนี่ยวันนี้พี่เมฆก็เลยพาทางเจสสิก้านะฮะคุณเจสสิก้าซึ่งก็เป็น Associate Director of Admission นะฮะของDuke MBA เนี่ยมาคุยกันนะฮะว่าทำยังไงถึงจะเข้า Duke ได้นะฮะ Duke มีดีอะไรแล้วก็มีคำถามหลายๆอย่างมากมายเช่นเคยเดี๋ยวเรามารับชมกันเลยครับ
Hello everyone, thanks for joining us today. Delighted to be joined by Jessica, who is the Associate Director of Admissions at the Fuqua School of Business, which is of course part of Duke University. Today is going to be quite a straightforward Q&A session, so any questions you may have about Fuqua, the MBA program, Duke, anything like that, we'll do our best to get through them today. Jessica, thanks so much for joining us today. Could you start by introducing yourself and maybe telling us how you came to work for Fuqua?
Absolutely. Thank you very much for the invitation as well. I am happy to be here. My name is Jessica Brown. I am an Associate Director of Admissions at Fuqua. And believe it or not, I've been at Fuqua a little over 15 and a half years. It's been a long time. But I've worked in higher education for over 20 years. So I guess it's a passion that I started as an undergraduate student actually, and recognizing that I could help people make decisions about where they wanted to go and what they wanted to do. So that's kind of driven my passion for admissions. And Fuqua is a fantastic program. I love working at Duke. I think our community is amazing, and so it makes it a great place to work.
Yeah, and definitely one of the most prestigious and highest ranked MBA programs. In your opinion, what are some unique attributes that Fuqua has?
Great question, and I get that often, especially from prospective students, and they're wanting to know what makes Fuqua different than other schools. And I think it boils down to a couple of things, two in particular that I'll mention, and that's the people. And the people help to define our community. I think when you're looking at MBA programs, you'll find they will all have great curriculum, great faculty members, strong alumni bases. But when you think about the things that make our program special, it's definitely the Team Fuqua concept that a lot of our alumni and current students talk about. It's recognizing that you're contributing to the greater good of a team, helping to work well in a collaborative environment through challenges, through differences to accomplish a common goal. And that also feeds into our culture. It feeds into who we are as an individual, but more so as a collective unit, a collaborative unit. And I think that that is what makes Fuqua different than all the other schools.
Okay, and can we talk a little bit about Durham? Because
Sure.
I know some students won't be too familiar with that part of the world.
Absolutely. I might be a little biased in saying I think Durham is the perfect place for your MBA. It's not the hustle and bustle of Bangkok. Not a lot of skyscrapers, not a lot of traffic either. But I think when you're thinking about a calm city that provides an opportunity for you to have personal and professional experiences, Durham provides that. It's not in New York, it's not in Bangkok, it's not in LA, but our community is one that allows you to foster like authentic friendships and relationships, which makes the MBA experience really cool. So you're not just taking classes with your classmates and then on Friday, everybody kind of goes their own separate way and then they come back together on Monday. Our students live in the same communities, the same apartment complexes. They're intentionally doing activities throughout the week and on the weekends to just kind of decompress from class and recruiting and all the things of the academic component of the MBA experience. We have all 4 seasons in Durham, so I know we're used to like warm and hot weather here in Thailand, but we are about a 2-hour drive to the beach, about a 2.5-3 hour drive to the mountains. When you're thinking about being able to get back home or to travel to other places, it's a 20-minute ride to the airport from campus that can get you anywhere in the world that you need to go. So essentially, Durham is a really great place to be that allows many different opportunities to be active as a student, but also to meet your personal needs.
So I want to ask you about the concept of bucketing. Essentially, who are Thai people competing against when they apply to the MBA program at Fuqua? Is it only students within Thailand or Southeast Asia or the entirety of Asia or just all over the world?
I'd love to answer that question by also providing more context about our office structure. So each of our admissions advisors, we have both a domestic and international region that we are assigned to, and we recruit in those regions specifically. I am the admissions advisor for Southeast Asia. That means that I have the opportunity to come to Thailand and other countries fairly regularly to meet with prospective candidates and applicants to learn the culture and to learn about their needs as an applicant. Because the needs here are going to be different than the needs in Vietnam or in Singapore, for example. And so the more knowledge I gain about the region, the better I can communicate the needs of those applicants to the admissions committee. So with that being said, because we do recruit in that structure, we tend to evaluate applicants from the same perspective. So as I am reading files and evaluating a candidate, I am not going to compare a US candidate to a Thai candidate, to a Chinese candidate, to an Indian candidate. They all have different educational structures. The educational systems are different. And so to make sure that we are providing a fair evaluative process, we will compare, as we say, apples to apples and then oranges to oranges.
And I also wanted to touch on the Alumni Network, which I believe is quite active in Thailand. Could you tell us about that?
Absolutely. As a matter of fact, I attended a networking event while I've been here on this particular trip. And the Alumni Network here in Thailand and Bangkok in particular is very strong. At Fuqua, we have 12 programs actually, not just an MBA program, which means that we have alumni in this area across all of those programs. So when it's time to come together to celebrate our program, to welcome newly admitted students into the program, the alumni are very intentional with helping them to talk about how to make transitions to Durham, what they can expect in their experience, but also giving them support while they're still here. I think we have maybe 30 to 40 alumni within the area, again, across programs. And they do a big send-off to our admitted students for the different programs throughout the year. But the Alumni Network is very supportive. It really helps provide comfort to an admitted student to know that they have someone that they can talk to, that they can share any concerns about their experience, someone to help them prepare, again, to make that transition to Durham, to think about the next steps of their career and how to do it in a way where they'll be successful in our program.
Okay, that sounds great. So obviously a school like Duke, a strong GPA and a strong GMAT score, things like that are expected. But I'm wondering what other attributes you look for in applicants.
Absolutely, great question. A strong test score and a strong GPA, they're both great. It helps us to know that you perform well in hopefully a challenging academic setting that provides a great foundation that you'll need when you're coming into an MBA program. But that's just one of many components. There are actually 6 different components to our application process. And we strongly emphasize and want to make sure that applicants know our process is holistic, meaning one part of the application does not have more weight than the other. And I think we demonstrate that through the different things that we're looking for. So your academic background, professional background, leadership and community involvement, the essays obviously, which I'll touch on in a moment, the letter of recommendation and the interview. All those things together help us to fully understand whom you are as a complete applicant versus just looking at one part. I think the one thing that really helps our applicants to show that we're intentional about really getting to know them is our random 25 things essay question, because we ask you to share things about yourself that we won't read in any other component of your application. So sometimes it takes a lot of digging and some self-reflection to decide what they want to share, how they want to communicate it, is that okay? And the constant feedback that I've heard from applicants who do the essay is that they really felt like we wanted to know who they are as an individual, as a person, the things that really drive them, their personal interest, and that's important to them. They believe our wording in that they're not just a test score or a GPA, but that we're really wanting to understand who they are collectively. And I think that essay in particular allows us to do that.
Yeah, well, it's very unique. Not a lot of schools have that kind of essay.
It is.
And it certainly forces a candidate to be quite introspective and you know, talk about themselves.
Absolutely.
So obviously, for Fuqua, there's no waiver for GMAT. And I know you've just mentioned how it's a holistic approach and you consider many different factors. But realistically, what is the kind of minimum GMAT that's going to give a candidate a chance?
Sure. And the honest answer to that is realistically, we don't have a minimum. Our middle 80% range is a 670 to a 760. So that means 80% of the students we admitted had a score that fell within that space. 10% below, 10% above. But again, while the GMAT is one test, it's one of three, which means that they have the opportunity to also present a GRE score and an executive assessment score. We have no bias or preference as to which test they submit, and so we want to make sure that it's clear. There have been applicants that have taken each test, so they submitted a GMAT, a GRE, and an executive assessment score. Ultimately, we want them to provide the most competitive score that they can, regardless of the format, and recognize again it's one of many components. If for whatever reason something has impacted their ability to be able to perform as best as they could, they can let the admissions committee know so that we are aware and can take that into consideration.
Okay, that sounds good. And in terms of scholarships, what scholarships are available for Fuqua students? Is there any specific scholarships for people in Thailand or Southeast Asia, anything like that?
Great question. We have merit-based scholarships regardless of citizenship. Any student that is admitted into our program, they are automatically reviewed for merit-based scholarships at the time that their final decision is rendered. And if they are awarded a merit-based scholarship, they will be notified of that once they receive their decision and log into their portal. So they'll see both at the same time. We do ask questions such as like lived experiences if they're low income or first generation. That information is helpful in addition to just the other components of the application as well. There is not a separate application for those merit-based scholarships that we award. There's no other file. They don't have to do anything else but submit a competitive file, which is another reason why we emphasize submitting a very competitive application, because that's the content and the information that we'll use to render or make a decision on merit-based scholarships for those individual applicants.
And you wouldn't happen to know what percentage of students are given some kind of scholarship?
It will vary from year to year, so it's hard for me to give you a concrete figure. In previous years, it's been a third. In other years, it's been more. It just depends upon the applicant pool and the competitive nature.
Okay. So one question that I get all the time is about finding employment in the US after someone finishes an MBA. Notoriously quite difficult. I understand a lot of the programs are now STEM certified and that makes things a little bit easier. But what kind of support does Fuqua provide to students looking to stay in the US after their studies?
Yeah, absolutely. Another great question.
Thanks very much.
Great questions for all of them, thank you. So there are a number of things that we do for all of our students, but for our international students in particular, because we know that they do have special needs that have to be addressed through their 2 years within our program. Every student that's admitted, they get immediate access to our Career Management Center. They have the opportunity to reach out to staff members that have relationships with different companies that are coming to recruit to try and get an idea and understand what those companies are looking for, how they can kind of prepare in advance to their arrival for what the job recruitment process might look like. There are dedicated career members within the Career Management Center that work with international students specifically. And then we also have a group of staff members, of which I'm a part of. We call ourselves like the International Roundtable, and we meet about every 2 to 3 months to talk about the needs of our international students as well and how we can help them navigate through those processes. Of course, the students will come in having spoken with either current students or recent alumni or members of the Career Management Center to get an idea as to what the employment opportunities might look like, what companies may or not be sponsoring, how do they put themselves in spaces to receive those opportunities and to prepare for recruiting. And our career management officers are very intentional with having those sometimes difficult conversations, but also preparatory conversations to get them ready for what that looks like. That also ties into the Alumni Network that you mentioned earlier. So helping them to understand what the recruiting cycle looks like for different industries and functions, and how to prepare for those things with their resumes and mock interviews and case studies and all of those things. One of the things that I also like to highlight for FUCO in particular, and I'm sure it's similar with other MBA programs, is when companies are coming on campus to recruit, more than likely they're sending FUCO alumni to return to recruit more people like them, which means that they're really wanting to help our students navigate this process successfully. So if they can have conversations with them to provide insight into those positions, opportunities that are available to do, other individuals that they could talk to at their respective firms to get more insight into certain roles, they will do all of those things to try and help get them through that process. In addition to that, there are multiple virtual information sessions that our Career Management Center will hold from the time that they're admitted up until they actually arrive on campus. We have Ask Me Anything sessions where they can literally hop in and ask anything, whether it's about a particular job or how to prepare for their arrival, pre-MBA programs, for example, etc. So there's lots of things. And then lastly, you touched on the STEM part, which I think is very important. We don't want to overlook that. The STEM designation does allow for those 3 years of OPT, so the ability to work in the U.S. without having the work visa, and that is a big part of recruiting for our international students. I think actually FUCO was the first MBA program to be STEM certified, and so because of that, I think that gives us a slight advantage in having those relationships established with employers, but also having our career management team ready and prepared to help those students find those types of positions.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like there's a lot of support available. Would you say that most international students that really want to stay in the US after they graduate, would you say they have that opportunity?
So I would say that there is an opportunity for them. I think there are many things that may be out of their control in regards to just global trends that we might see, how companies are hiring, if they make any changes, what influences those changes, and some of those things may be foreseen and unseen. But I love that our international staff within the Career Management Center, they're very intentional about staying on top of those things. And so when our applicants apply, we ask them for their post-MBA goal and then their alternate goal, like what's their plan B? So if their primary goal doesn't come to pass, then what's next? And sometimes we have to ask, so what's next? What's the next thing that we can do so that they don't leave our program empty-handed, feeling unaccomplished and not having the opportunity to be able to say, I have the job offer and I'm ready to go. And so I think it's important that any student, international or not, come in recognizing that they have the support. Even sometimes if the primary goal doesn't materialize, there are other options, and they're going to work very intentionally with them to make sure that those things do come to pass.
Excellent. So as we mentioned previously, a lot of students are not going to be too familiar about Durham. For things like accommodation, will FUQA support students finding accommodation?
For the first time, just recently within the past year or two, Duke University has started to provide on-campus housing for graduate students. That was not the norm prior to. Now, that is on a first-come, first-served basis. So depending upon when you're admitted and the timeline of your decision notification, you may have the opportunity to take advantage of that. If not, traditionally, our students tend to stay within the same communities. So there may be, let's just say anywhere between 5 to 10 apartment communities that are frequented by FUCA students in particular. And most students will tend to try and stay within the same spaces as their classmates. So when you come for our admitted students weekend, you can see those apartment communities in person. If you're not able to come to campus, like our MBAA, which is the Student Government Association, they actually have a housing guide that they provide to our students that kind of helps them navigate which apartment communities to consider, different housing options, and how to take advantage of those.
So a lot of options available.
Yes, lots of options available.
Sounds good. All right, well, massive thank you, Jessica, for joining us today. That was really insightful, really interesting to learn more about FUQA, Duke, their MBA program. Really interesting. If anyone maybe has further questions, needs more information, how can they contact you?
Absolutely. They're more than welcome to email me. My email address is jessica.brown-admissions@fuqua.duke.edu.
Awesome. Thank you, Jessica. Thanks everyone for watching. Bye-bye.
ก็จบกันไปแล้วนะฮะสำหรับการสัมภาษณ์สุด Exclusive นะฮะระหว่างอัลลี่ Consultant ของ Mission to Top You แล้วก็เจสสิก้านะฮะซึ่งก็เป็น Associate Director ของ Duke MBA เนาะใครที่ยังมีคำถามสงสัยใดๆนะฮะสามารถพิมพ์คอมเมนต์พิมพ์คำถามทิ้งกันมาได้ใน YouTube นี้เลยก็ได้เนาะใครที่ยังไม่ได้ Subscribe นะฮะช่อง Mission to Top You เรารีบ Subscribe ได้แล้วนะฮะใครที่มีคำถามเพิ่มเติมนะฮะสามารถทักกันมาที่ Line Official Account ของเราเนาะ @Mission to Top You แล้วสามารถนัดมาคุยฟรี Consultation Call กันได้นะฮะ15 นาทีนะพี่ก็คุยกับน้องให้เต็มที่เลยให้น้องกระจ่างในทุกเรื่องที่น้องมีนะฮะเตรียมกันมาคุยได้เลยเนาะวันนี้เราลากันตรงนี้นะฮะแล้วพบกันในโอกาสถัดไปนะครับสวัสดีครับบ๊ายบายครับ